Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first spiritual gathering of 2022. We welcome all of you online today, having paused our in-person gatherings for these few first weeks in January as a way to keep one another safe in this time. As we cross the threshold into a new year, into a new month, into a new week, into a new day, wherever you find yourself in this unrepeatable moment, we meet one another here in song and in prayer and in wisdom ancient and new and in silence. We welcome you, wherever you are today, to this community of seekers, this community of care, of encouragement, and of accompaniment. Thanks to the gifts of technology, we'll share a number of safely pre-recorded segments of music and of theater in our gathering today. I'm joined in welcoming you with our small on-site team today. My teammate Chris, of course, and at the piano and our playwright, Pam, along with Noah and Andrea, who are helping us with technology, and Dawn, who is holding space for each of you. Wherever you are just now, I invite you to join me as we pause to acknowledge our debt to the land that holds us, the land that opens to feed us, the land that grounds us in place, the land with which we seek to be faithful, to reduce our harm and to foster right relationship. And with deep respect, we remember its first peoples, those whose story is generations long in our place, in this place, where our feet are placed, those whose traditions are deeply connected to this land. Whether you find yourself in treaty territory or unceded territory, may we each begin this new year deepening our intention to heal the broken trust and to build a more equitable relationship as settlers, as immigrants, as refugees, as Indigenous peoples. We also take a moment, having honored place, to honor time as we light our candles with one another, as a symbol of our intention to honor the gift of light, that which makes life on this planet possible. Let's each light our candle wherever we are this morning. And in the presence of this flame, let's open as we share time that might help us see sacred light in one another, sacred light that shines in every being, and that we might deepen our intention to open to the light of our truest and best humanity as we open to this moment in time.
This is the time, this is the place to refresh and renew in a mindful space. Others around who also have found our connections in life as the common ground. Much wisdom to share for the living of our lives, a place for receiving and offering care, a time set aside to share. This is the time, this is the place to refresh and renew in a mindful space. Others around who also have found our connections in life as the common ground. Much wisdom to share for the living of our lives, a place for receiving and offering care, a time set aside to share.
Good morning. In 1897, an 8-year-old girl wrote a short letter to the editor of the New York Sun. In it, she asked a heartfelt, "Is there a Santa Claus?" An eloquent 416-word response penned by the paper's lead editorial writer has become the most reprinted editorial in the history of newspapers worldwide. Its now 124-year affirmation, "Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus," has become an everyday expression when insisting that something is true. The following is a true story of how this came to be, incorporating the original letter and the full editorial published in reply, and taken from interviews both with Virginia and some of the other writers that were involved, other people involved, including Frank Church, who wrote the editorial. With thanks to the cast and to Nancy and Chris for the technical assist, here is today's Time for All Ages.
Millions of people around the world have kept this real story alive for 124 years. Let me introduce you to those who brought it to life and who shaped its future place in our hearts.
My name is Frances Parcelis Church. Everyone calls me Frances, never Frank. I am 58 years old and the year is 1897.
My name is Laura Virginia O'Hanlon. Everyone calls me Virginia. I am 8 years old and the year is 1897.
My name is Laura Virginia O'Hanlon Douglas. Everyone calls me Virginia or Mrs. Douglas. I'm 44 years old and the year is 1933.
My name is Laura Virginia O'Hanlon Douglas. I don't care what anyone calls me anymore. I am 80 years old, and the year is 1969.
My name is John Harms. Lots of people call me Santa Claus. The year is 1969, and this is where we begin.
As a child, I believed in Santa Claus, for he had never disappointed me. But while playing together in the summer of 1897, my friends, who were less fortunate than I, said he didn't exist, and I began to be filled with doubts. So I said to my father, a very trustworthy police surgeon and coroner's assistant,
Papa, my friends are teasing me about believing in Santa. They say there is no Santa. Is there a Santa Claus?
He was uncharacteristically evasive on the subject, but as a frequent writer to the New York Sun's popular questions and answers column, he suggested I write a letter to the editor and ask him.
So I did. Dear editor, I am 8 years old. Some of my little friends say there is no Santa Claus. Papa says, if you see it in the sun, it's so. Please tell me the truth. Is there a Santa Claus? Signed, Virginia O'Hanlon, 115 West 95th Street.
The letter arrived mid-July when my brother was the Sun publisher and I its lead editorial writer. What a silly question, I thought, shoving it aside and forgetting about it.
But why?
After 20 grueling years covering American Civil War, I was now a bona fide cynic, skeptical of religion, superstition, fairy tales, folklore, and such. Generally a curmudgeon.
well, then how did...
About 2 months later, in the course of my regular day's work, I happened again upon the letter. Reading it from a different perspective and considering the philosophical issues underlying the simple question, I hastily banged out a reply.
I always wondered why your editorial ran in the Tuesday, September 21st edition and not right away, or maybe nearer to Christmas.
That day, at its deadline, my brother needed a filler, something to fill empty space in a third of the 3 columns of our editorial page.
I'll never forget what you wrote.
Virginia, your little friends are wrong. They have been affected by the skepticism of a skeptical age. They do not believe except what they see. They think that nothing can be which is not comprehensible to their little minds.
Is my mind little?
All minds, Virginia, whether they're men's or children's or little. In this great universe of ours, man is a mere insect, an ant in his intellect, as compared with the boundless world about him, as measured by the intelligence capable of grasping the whole of truth and knowledge.
But what about Santa?
Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus.
Hooray!
He exists as certainly as love and generosity and devotion exist. And you know they abound and give you your life its highest beauty and joy. Alas, how dreary would be the world if there were no Santa Claus. It would be as dreary as if there were no Virginias.
No Virginias?
There would be no childlike faith then, no poetry, no romance to make tolerable this existence. We should have no enjoyment except in sense and sight. The eternal light with which childhood fills the world would be extinguished.
It's never been explained to me in a way that makes so much sense.
Nor me.
Nor me.
Not believe in Santa Claus? You might as well say you don't believe in fairies. You might get your papa to hire men to watch all the chimneys on Christmas Eve to catch Santa Claus, but even if they did not see Santa Claus coming down, what would that prove? Nobody sees Santa Claus, but there is no sign that there is no Santa Claus.
Then what is real?
The most real things in the world are things that neither children nor men can see. Did you ever see fairies dancing on the lawn? Of course not, but that's no proof that they are not there. Nobody conceive or imagine all the wonders there are, unseen and unseeable in the world.
Nobody.
From birth
To grave.
You may tear apart the baby's brattle and see what makes the noise inside, but there is a veil covering the unseen world, which not the strongest men, nor even the united strength of all the strongest men that ever lived, could tear apart.
a veil?
Only faith, fancy, poetry, love, and romance can push aside that curtain and view and picture the supernal beauty and glory beyond.
Is that all real?
Ah, Virginia, in all this world, there is nothing else real and abiding. No Santa Claus? Thank God, he lives, and he lives forever. 1,000 years from now, Virginia, nay, 10,000, 10 times 10,000 years from now, he will continue to make glad the heart of childhood.
In keeping with editorial tradition, Is There a Santa Claus was published by the Sun unsigned. Only after the death of Francis Church was it revealed that he was its author.
Overnight, we braced ourselves for disparaging comments from our rivals. This is common practice when one of us goes out on a limb. Curiously, none came, but untold numbers of readers wrote in year after year requesting my editorial be republished at Christmas.
Every December, as surely as the revolving year brings back the holiday season, please bring back Virginia.
A fine relief from the commercialism and unsentimental greed of the Christmas season.
A ray of hope on the path to human understanding in our troubled times.
Our position was newspapers are for new news and views, not old. We resisted mounting reader pressure for 10 years, at which point my brother begrudgingly gave in, saying, well, scrapbooks seem to be wearing out.
Scrapbooks. That's funny. My copy of the original clipping is in one of my granddaughter's scrapbooks.
Virginia's letter and the editorial finally appeared again, and though the paper didn't begin routinely republishing it annually until the 1920s, it did so without fail until folding in 1949.
I married, had a daughter and 7 grandchildren, earned a doctorate degree, and spent 43 years as an educator. I was fortunate to spend all those Christmases in the company of children. 10 years after retiring in 1959, I had to be hospitalized at Christmas time with heart trouble.
A maintenance worker at the hospital, it was my habit to dress up as Santa. Donning the traditional red suit and hat, and big white beard. It cheered up our patients, you understand. Christmas Eve in 1969, I visited Virginia in her room, and my wife snapped a photo of me kissing Virginia's cheek. That's when she whispered in my ear,
I still believe in Santa Claus.
I am so happy and proud to have such overwhelming proof that I'm right and my friends are wrong.
The older I grow, the more I realize what a perfect philosophy for life that editorial is. I feel a sort of responsibility to live up to its ideals. It continues to bring into my life so many interesting and kind things I don't think would ever have been there if I hadn't written that letter and received such an eloquent response to my simple question, is there a Santa Claus?
I still receive mail about Santa Claus. I personally reply to each writer and attach a copy of the editorial. The older I get, the more I read into it, and the more I see what it means to others to have such a firm conviction in the best things in life.
Faith.
Nancy.
Poetry.
Love.
Romance.
Virginia died 2 years later in a nursing home. In its entrance resides a plaque inscribed with a quote from Virginia.
Remember the children at Christmas.
And now we ask you to keep this story alive by passing it along to the 8-year-olds in your life and through them to the 8-year-olds in their lives. And so it will live on.
Because, yes, Virginia, and all of us, there is a Santa Claus.
Share with you a reading from the poet Anne Hillman entitled "We Look with Uncertainty." We look with uncertainty beyond the old choices for clear-cut answers to a softer, more permeable aliveness, which is every moment at the brink of death. For something new is being born in us if we but let it. We stand at a new doorway, awaiting that which comes, daring to be human creatures vulnerable to the beauty of existence, learning to love. It's in these words of Anne Hillman that we seek to find wisdom for our living.
We have this day the gift of now.
One of the things we learned in elementary school was that every paragraph must have three things: a beginning, a middle, and an end. Every speech must have an introduction, a main body, and a conclusion. And we easily overlay that structure on our lives and see our lives in that kind of linear way of beginnings and middles and endings. But what if there's another way to live? What if we are ever and only and always beginners? What if birth is not just a once-in-a-lifetime event? In our need to measure and mark time, our species has devised calendars. And generally, those calendars have either been based on solar or lunar events, patterns. With most of the world, we mark and measure our lives in relation to each completed rotation that our planet makes around its nearest star. And we've all just celebrated what we've decided is the collective anniversary of another successful orbit around the sun. We've begun a new year, a new trip around the sun. And each of us mark our own individual completed circuits of the anniversary of our arrival in the world with our birthday. Here's one of the ways we can account for our last 365 days. So after all that, more than 11 billion miles later, here we are at the beginning of it all again. Even if we take the conservative number and just account for our orbit, the circumference, 583 million miles later, here we are, starting over. Not only does our science teach us that we're beginners, but the enduring wisdom teachers of all time teach that same truth. There's a story passed down to us in the Jesus tradition. It's shaped as a conversation with a man named Nicodemus, and it goes something like this. Now there was a Pharisee, a respected religious scholar named Nicodemus, a leader among the Jewish people. He came to Jesus under the cover of darkness and said to him, "Rabbi, we know you're a teacher who has come from the great and holy oneness. No one can do what you do unless they're in touch with the depths of that sacredness." Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, no one can experience the realm of the sacred without being born again." Nicodemus said to him, "How can anyone be reborn after having grown old? Can one enter a second time into the mother's womb and be born?" Jesus answered him, "Don't be surprised when I say you must be born again and again." Written more than 60 years after the execution of Jesus, this conversation between a mystic and a scholar may have been constructed as a kind of teaching device. It's a story that tells us something about the way in which those spiritual seekers who were emerging out of their Jewish roots into a new identity as followers of the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, they were struggling to let go and hold on to the tradition out of which their movement was born. If we think of this as a parable rather than as a historical memory, we might hear a perennial lesson from the curriculum of every enduring wisdom tradition. To be fully and deeply alive, to be in touch with our deepest identity as human beings, human becomings, we have to be beginners. We have to major in beginnings. We have to be born again and again to each new day, to each new moment in each new day. The writer has Jesus suggest to Nicodemus that he could only awaken to the mystery of being fully alive in body, mind, and spirit, living a life that matters, by giving himself again and again to the experience of birth. But in the world of this story, Nicodemus couldn't let go of his literal, linear, logical mindset to grasp the metaphor that was staring him in the eye. He was stumped by this image of trying to squeeze himself back into his mother's womb, missing the meaning that if he wanted to truly awaken to the repeatable experience of birth, of being born again and again and again, delivered from the womb of security in which he had taken refuge, delivered from the womb of answers to questions no one was even asking anymore. He had to be delivered from the womb of authority, of living inside the shelter of his laws and his traditions and his cherished practices. He had to give himself to the process of being born to each new moment in time, and to trust the dark passage that opens through ambiguity to the messy reality of being truly alive. To live life as a spiritually awake being asks us to leave the womb of our present attachments, to let go of our most closely guarded ideas, our most treasured beliefs, our fears, our uncertainties, our resistance to the movement of time, and keep giving ourselves to the vulnerable journey of opening to the mystery in which we live and move and have our being. Isn't it about awakening to a universe that's saturated with the sacred, infused, intimately, divinely, and intensely holy in all its beauty and all its terror? Isn't it about living a spiritually awake life, of being born again to each morning from the sleep of death, the birthing of consciousness that comes from the kind of openness that allows oneself to be as thoroughly new as a newborn to each new moment, each new day, each relationship, each experience. To be like a newborn, meeting the world with wonder, filled with awe and mystery, inviting our discovery, but also requiring our trust, our hope. I think what we hear in this constructed dialogue of the ancient story is that every day is our birthday. Every day is a day to begin again. Every breath is new to us. Every moment is as one never been here before. Each day is a day to be born into, just like the day is born out of the night, just like the year is born again with each new orbit around our sun. Today is a day to remember, as the year is new. The grace of life is that we're always beginners, never experts, never old hands. No matter how long we've been here, we're each beginning from this moment, once again. In this start of a new year, this fresh page of a new calendar, these fresh tracks in the snow, it's not about making New Year's resolutions. It's really about welcoming a new revolution, another beginning, a new chance, another turn, an opportunity to live as beginners, to live in the ways that seek birth at every opportunity. In the words of the poet Anne Hillman, the words Chris read for us a few moments ago, something new is being born in us if we let it. We stand in a new doorway, awaiting that which comes, daring to be human creatures, vulnerable to the beauty of existence, learning to love.
We join together to strengthen our intentions with the words that you find before us. As we begin a new year, we long to bless what was, let go of what might have been, and embrace the miracle of what is. Amid harsh news and urgent cries, may we be attentive to the grace of what we can set free and what we must hold closely. May we cultivate a sense of humor that adds perspective to compassion, gratitude that adds persistence to courage, quietness of spirit that adds irrepressibility to hope, and openness of mind that adds surprise to joy. May we learn to begin again and again. May it be so. As we share these invitations, I know that we're all disappointed that 2022 has not started with us being together as community, but alas, because of Omicron and the persistence of COVID, our reopening task group has decided to suspend in-person attendance for the next 4 Sundays. So we will know more at the end of January, and I know our task group and our board will be in touch with the community around what holds for February in terms of in-person gatherings. The office will still be open for deliveries and pickups every Thursday from 10 to 1, and so we invite you to call ahead just to make sure, but to know that you can have access to what you need from the church office on Thursdays. For those of you wanting some face-to-face time to connect and to discuss some questions that take you deeper into the day's theme, join the post-gathering Zoom call. Around 11:15 a.m. each Sunday, Nell will host you, and thanks to her for hosting and offering a time and some depth of conversation for us to go deeper. At the close of the year and the turn of the calendar and the beginning of a new year, we appreciate your support of our community. For those who supported the No Room in the Inn campaign, many thanks. We'll have a count for you shortly on how we were able to support that wonderful cause of L'Arche community. And for those of you who continue to support the ongoing work of SSUC, our outreach, our support of our facility, opening to community groups that need the space, we thank you for that very much. And we know that you will continue to support with the ways that you saw on your screen, and know that we appreciate every bit that you're able to help with our ongoing work.
May the long-time sun shine upon us. All love surround us, and the pure light within us guide our way on.
we take our light into this new moment in time, as we change the light in its form from flame to smoke, may we begin again, stepping into this new year with the words of John O'Donohue. May we come alive today to the invisible geography that invites us to new frontiers, to break the dead shell of yesterday, to risk being disturbed and changed. May we have the courage today to live the life we would love, to postpone the dream no longer, but to do at last what we came here for, and waste our hearts on fear no more.